Gaming in the late 90s was going through a drastic change. 2D games were perfected on the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis, but with the PlayStation, N64, and Sega Saturn, developers had to learn from the ground up again. This era of gaming I have nostalgia for, with Super Mario 64 and Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards being some of my favorite childhood games, while playing Crash Bash with my brother and watching him play Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage. But let's talk about Megaman. Megaman was thriving on the previous generation of consoles, with Mega Man 7 coming out late in the system's life, but was still a great time. The Mega Man X games being well liked, and the spin-offs that were coming out like Mega Man Soccer, the handheld games, and a remake of Mega Man 1 through 3 called The Wily Wars. When bringing Mega Man to the new system, Capcom decided to put Mega Man on the PlayStation instead of the N64 like most developers that generation like Square Enix and Konami. In 1996, we got Mega Man 8 on the PlayStation and Sega Saturn, which gave us some of the best visuals of any 2D game up to that point, and with the FMV cutscenes and voice acting. In 1997, we got two Mega Man games, the first one being Mega Man Legends, which was fully 3D and took Mega Man into a more action-adventure feel like Zelda. And for the topic of this video, we got Mega Man X4, which sought to do what Mega Man 8 did for the classic series. So let's get started. Mega Man X4 is different from the previous 3X games because of how the game starts. When you start a new game, you are given the choice between playing as X or playing as Zero. So how I am going to structure this video is that I am going to start off with X's story, then talk about Zero's story. So let's talk about X. X's campaign starts with the General of Leopard Force talking with a mysterious figure. We know who this is. One day, Sky Lagoon starts to get attacked and X goes up to the city to see what is going on. Magma Dragoon says that the city is going to fall and it kills thousands of innocent lives. As Rebel Force was present in the area, they were put under suspicion and Colonel was asked that Rebel Force surrender for questioning. Colonel refuses and this leads the Rebel Force to be labeled as Mavericks. X and the Rookie Hunter Double must stop their plans. What I noticed during the moment where they are explaining your mission is that you aren't just going to each area to kill a Rebel Force member or a Maverick, you are doing something else, like going to the jungle is to find the member of Rebel Force because it has a large laser cannon, or going to find Magma Dragoon to bring him in for questioning. Little stuff like that makes it that the stages you are going through mean something more than Maverick of the Week, as I would say for X1, X2, or hell, even X3. X controls like previous games that it's basically gotten to the point where it is really hard to describe the controls of the game. Jump, wall dash, shoot, charge, and so on and so forth. What has changed is the dash in a way you would never expect. In the prior X games, you could spam the dash button for repeat dashes. In PS1 X games, there are more frames of build-up and cooldown than on the SNES, meaning that there is a slight delay when you spam the dash button. So what I do that you may have seen in a bit of the previous videos is that I dash jump to keep up my momentum. But that's really about it in terms of controls, so I guess I should talk about the special weapons themselves. The special weapons to me at this point after X1 have just been kind of lacking, so I normally don't use the special weapons after X1. The only times I ever use the special weapons in this game are the Twin Slashers in certain areas, Rising Fire, and Lightning Web to get upgrades, and just the typical weaknesses for bosses, mainly in the final level. But the level design in X4 is some pretty fun stuff, I gotta say. I thought X3 stages fumbled the ball in terms of level design, cause the stages didn't really have good enemy placements, went on for too long, and did not vary the gimmicks and memorable set pieces that much. But in X4, the levels are so much fun to go through. The first thing that they decided to do was to split the levels into two sections. Let's use Magma Dragoon's level as an example. You go through the first section with fireballs and fire coming out of the ground. Then when you head to the next section, we have the fireballs at the first part of the second half, but then you have a ride armor and you can use it to get to the boss. This kind of unique set piece, while also being fun, is in every stage of X4. The waterfall logs and web spider stage, the falcon mech and storm owl stage, and the speedrunning you need to do at Cyber Peacock stage, and it's all really fun. I honestly can't think of a better way to end talking about X at the moment, because now we are going to talk about Zero. Zero is the second playable character in the game, and will be a prominent playable character in the rest of the X series going forward. The story for Zero starts with him getting weird dreams where he sees dead robots and a figure that he has never seen before. Just as he wakes, he heads to the Sky Lagoon. After it falls, he finds the Colonel's sister, Iris. After the Sky Lagoon stage, Iris begs Zero for both his brother and Zero to not fight each other. Halfway through the stages with X, you would have to fight Colonel, but with Zero, you get a cutscene with Zero fighting when Iris comes in to intervene. I don't really mind the story of X4. All of these X games suffer from translation issues all the time, and I personally believe that X4 has the least bad translations out of the games. What ruins the story for most people is a thing we'll get to when we talk about the presentation. So how does Zero play? Zero in X3 was a good idea for a playable Zero. If you get rid of the problem of Zero being limited in what he can do and not be able to play as him again if he dies, but since Zero in this game gets his own story, we don't need to worry about losing him or him being limited. Zero has the same moves as X, except for his primary attacking option and his special weapons. Zero houses the C-Saber to fight his enemies, aside from the Z-Buster he has been using since X1. With the C-Saber, you need to get up close to the enemy and press the square button 3 times to do a 3/saber combo. What makes Zero fun is that when you hit the opponent, you get a satisfaction of taking the risk of getting close to the opponent, which could lead to you getting hit. But with the speed of hitting the enemy, it isn't a problem. Now, for the special move Zero gets after defeating a boss is more so focused on giving more mobility and combo potential. Zero's mobility options increase after you beat Split Mushroom and Jet Stingray. The first one I got was the ability to double jump, which can be really helpful with platforming, and once you beat Jet Stingray, you are able to air dash, which can also be helpful with platforming and dodging attacks as well. With the other upgrades, you get new abilities. After defeating Magma Dragoon, you get the Ryujin, which is where Zero does a fiery upward slash, which has good coverage. You also get more moves like Kyunzin, which changes Zero's air attack to be in a circle, which gives him more coverage and makes him less vulnerable. Hiryutsuzan from False Walrus, which can help you deal with enemies below you. Every move you unlock for Zero makes him more fun to play. I see the differences between X and Zero as thus. Do you want a character that has a bit harder time in the stages but has an easier time with the bosses? Or do you want a character with easier time with the stages but a harder time with the bosses? Because that's basically what the option is in Megaman X4. The bosses in X4 are such bangers to fight. Without special weapons, these bosses have some interesting ways of dodging their attacks. Like the lightning web from Web Spider, where you need to wall jump over it or you're in for a life of pain. Learning the best way to dodge Dormammu's green balls. I love the Magma Dragoon fight because of his interesting moves and the fact that you could bring the ride armor in to fight him, making him the best boss at any Mega Man game for me. Zero is the same, but there are differences with Zero. With Zero's Rajikiken, it does good damage on Slash Beast, but it will leave you vulnerable, so you have to weigh your options on that, or when you were fighting Stormell. You only have 4 uses of his weakness, and you need to pay attention once you run out of ammo, making some of the bosses with Zero more skill-based than the other bosses. Unless it's the boss rush, then I just want to end, and it takes forever. With that out of the way, we can talk about presentation and music. I think Mega Man X4 is one of the best looking side-scrollers. While it doesn't have the graphical fidelity of games like New Super Mario Bros. U or the intense colors of Sonic Mania, but the look of Mega Man X4 still holds up with sprites and animations that look fluid and expressive, which kind of harkens back to Mega Man X1 with how that was trying to push what the SNES can do in terms of X games and side-scrollers. There is also some stuff that was not groundbreaking today, but was cool back in 1997. The rushing water and Web Spider stage, the moving stairs and Split Mushroom stage, or the lights in the background of the Sky Lagoon. This is something that the SNES couldn't do. The cutscenes in Mega Man X4 have aged like milk since it was on the PS1, but what has aged the worst is the voice acting. I don't want to be too hard on the voice acting of Mega Man X4 because this was really the first video game generation that could do voice acting, but then when I played Metal Gear Solid for the first time earlier this year, I was reminded that X4 was on the same console. I don't think the voices are the problems with the voice acting, it's more so the delivery and direction that really kills it. Whenever this game gets talked about, everyone has to talk about Zero's cutscenes since they are the most memeable, and it kind of ruins how ambitious Zero's story was in telling something more than go fight the Mavericks, but instead we have to live with this quality.
I'm disappointed in you, Colonel. What do you think you're doing? It's not too late. Stop the coup now. Never. If that's your decision, prepare yourself!
Now, I think it's a good time as ever to bring up the music of the game. X3 on PS1 gave us a taste as what bangers PS1 quality X OSTs can give us, and the X4 OST is one that I think is up there with some of the best soundtracks on the PS1, with songs that are absolute bops and gives us different vibes to where you are, while being headbangers at the same time. Like, listen to these. The item game in X4 is where I would say a least bad chicken run is possible, unlike the later half of the X games where it doesn't exist and or doesn't get complicated. But the X run for me usually goes like this. I go to Mammoth Groon for the Heart Tank, grab everything at Web Spider stage, grab everything at Frost Walrus's stage, grab everything in Storm's Owl stage, grab everything in Slash Beach, go back to Mammoth Groon for the body parts, then grab everything in Split Mushroom, Cyber Peacock, and Jet Stingray. You want to go to Mammoth Groon and Web Spider stages first for the special weapons, since those are the weapons that you get almost every item in this game, like the arm parts in Storm Owl stage and the Heart Tank in Frost Walrus stage. The body parts in Mammoth Dragoon stage is the only backtrack you need to do, and it requires Twin Slasher and the arm parts to get it. Just make sure you have those before going back to Mammoth Dragoon's level. Zero's item game is much more different than X's. I go to Mammoth Dragoon, Web Spider, Split Mushroom, Frost Walrus, Silver Peacock, Storm Owl, Slash Beast, then Jet Stingray. The thing with Zero is that you just need the technique learned from Mammoth Dragoon and the arrow techniques learned from Split Mushroom, making it so that there are no backtracks needed if you go to those two levels. Guess we could talk about the items themselves. The amount of sub-tanks have been reduced to 2, which is a fine change for me since I think 4 sub-tanks was a little too generous, and I just used them by the final boss. We also get the EX tank, which raises your default life count from 2 to 4, and it's a fine idea, but if you get a game over, you just end up at the halfway point, so it's not worth it. The weapon tank is also one that is kind of not worth it because for Zero it only affects one weapon, and for X it's because of something we will talk about now. X's 4th armor, the Force armor, is probably my favorite armor in the entire series. The leg parts aren't as good as the leg parts of Megaman X3, but are still really useful. There are 2 arm parts in this game. The first one is where you charge up 4 charge shots at once, but I never really used this one because the damage is so low and it's not really worth it. And the second one where it becomes the plasma shot, which is a mini boss killer, and this is my arm part of choice. The body parts have a Giga attack in this game, but I forget it's there like all the other body parts with Giga attacks in the other X games. And the head parts, which is the best head parts in the entire series. The head parts give you the ability to use all your special weapons without depleting any ammo, making them kind of OP. But I don't care because it makes certain sections fun, but do be warned that it doesn't affect charge specials, so be careful. Now, we have to talk about the Saturn port of Megaman X4. I sampled a little bit of X's playthrough for this video, and I gotta say that's a little bit interesting. The game seemed to load faster than the original and save as soon as you hit the save button. The game seems to have this heat wave effect in the opening stage and in Mammoth Dragoon's level, which is pretty cool if I do say so myself. But the dash effect is not transparent as you can see here, and it looks kind of off-putting. These lights at the beginning of Sky Lagoon dither everywhere, as one might say. The cutscenes look lower quality than on the PS1, and the voice clips in the stages are a bit more crunched than on PS1. But the faster loading and quicker save make it so that I would play it over the PS1 version, but neither version is awful in my opinion. Now we get into the final levels of Megaman X4. After defeating the members of Rebel Force and some Mavericks, we head to the spaceport to get into the final weapon, where we go through an admittedly fun stage, though we can get into that later, where after you defeat Colonel, you learn that Rebel Force already took off to space. If you defeat Colonel as Zero, Kearney says to him, "Tell Iris that her brother died happily." In X's playthrough, when you head to the final weapon, you get a cutscene where Double kills some members of the Maverick Hunters in a scene that feels like a Sam Raimi movie.
Hey, Double, what's the matter?
Maverick Hunter, 17th unit. Commander X, please respond.
What happened? Report!
Nothing to worry about.
No further transmissions unless necessary to carry out the operation.
Understood.
I'm breaking contact.
And now, X will be my next target.
When you reach the end of the second stage of the final weapon, you are greeted with Double in X's run of the game, where Double reveals that he's evil and you battle him to the death. In Zero's playthrough, you fight Iris, who is very sad over her brother being dead, so Zero must fight Iris. After you defeat Double, he tells X that he was sent in as a spy, and tells X that his naiveness is his weakness. After you beat Iris, you get this cutscene with Zero that is actually quite compelling, with Iris saying she wants to live in a world where there is no fighting. But instead, we get this meme.
No, this isn't happening. There's no reason for me to go on. What am I fighting for?
After a fight with General, you head to the final level where it's the worst thing in any Mega Man game. A boss rush in the same level as a final boss. How fun! Then we meet Sigma, where in X's run, we learn that Sigma was the master plan of Rebel Force and the Maverick Hunters fighting. But in Zero's campaign, we learned that Zero was a Maverick before he joined the Maverick Hunters, and the cutscene showed us basically how Sigma became a Maverick and got those iconic scars, and it's really interesting. But also, this is Mega Man X4 again, and direction wasn't really there for the voice acting, like I said. Then we reached the final battle, which is really fun and fucking difficult as Zero. In Zero's ending, he realizes he couldn't save anyone, and in X's ending, he asked Zero if he ever became a Maverick to end him.
Don't ask such a silly question. I'm breaking contact now.
Wait, Zero! I'm serious! Zero, if I become a Maverick, you have to take care of me.
Don't be ridiculous. Now hurry on back.
Promise me. Zero.
Overall, while there are things I don't like in this game, I can't help but love it. It's one of my favorite games of all time. It is a game I have replayed so many times to the point that it never gets boring and I just speed through the stages. While I do think Mega Man X is the more well-designed game, X4 is simply the one I would drop everything and play. If you are interested in playing this game today, you can play it on the Mega Man X Legacy Collection on basically any console to this day. Join me next time when I defend Mega Man X5. If you liked today's video, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Letterboxd, link in the description. You can also watch my podcast, The Anonymous Gamers, where me, Protector, and a guest of ours talk about video games for about an hour or two, or maybe 3 if you're Sonic Adventure 2.
Oh my goodness. It really is peanut now.
I've successfully ruined Route 280 for Kibbs.
Oh yeah, that's the deal breaker for Route 280, yeah.
I'll have a link to the podcast in the description. Until then, I'm Avatar Aiden, and I'll see y'all next time.